Welcome to Life Her Podcast, the podcast that guides you from the 9-to-5 grind to the freedom of your own path. Discover how to conquer life's challenges while pursuing your passions with unwavering faith. Because being an entrepreneur is not easy. So let's get to it.
Hey everyone, I am Yvette Lloyd, host of Life Her Podcast. We have an amazing guest here tonight, and I'm super excited about it because a lot of things that we don't know about our brands, about ourselves, and what we're going to do as far as pivoting to the next level, even from us going from a 9 to 5 and walking into our personal branding, or even just overcoming imposter syndrome or being like an introvert or anything. But we have an amazing guest tonight that have all these answers for us, and she also has an amazing experience for it as well, and she's very vocal about any and everything, and I love it. So we have Monica Rivera with us tonight. So hey, Monica.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm happy that you're here. So how are things going today for you?
Things are going well. It's been a really busy time. So, at the time of this recording, it's Hispanic Heritage Month. And as a speaker, I get booked a lot specifically for this month. And so, there's a lot of talks on the way, which are really exciting.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. So, before you actually got into being a speaker and representing a lot of brands and doing and helping other people, what did you do before you actually got to this very moment?
So, I've been a marketer for my entire career. So, when I graduated college, even before I graduated college, I already had a job that was lined up good through the good old on campus recruiting. So, I had recruited on campus and I had a job set up about 6 weeks after I graduated. And so I started working in corporate marketing. I first worked in the banking industry. Then I moved over to telecom. I did consulting. So I've worked marketing many different functions for about, I would say 15 years. And so started to get an itch that I wanted to do something else. And I kept avoiding it and kind of saying, it's okay that I don't feel so happy in my career. I feel content. And then content went to, it's cool. And then it's cool went to, I feel very disconnected from the work that I'm doing. And when that feeling started to really overtake me, is when I decided I needed to make a change.
Wow. So, were you nervous to even just make that change? Because, sometimes people stall it and they're so used to being comfortable, you have to transition to being uncomfortable to try something like totally new to your life.
People is me. I stalled it for a really long time. So my first thing was I got into podcasting. So this was 7 years ago. Back in 2017, I had gone into podcasting. But the truth is, I had bought a microphone at the end of 2013. So it took me about 3.5 years of talking myself out of it, of having doubt, of saying, who's going to want to listen to this? Who am I to be doing this? Why am I shaking the boat and wanting to do something different when I have this corporate career? But that thought kept riding with me, but also simultaneously, I still knew I wanted to do something else until one day I said, you know what? F it. I plugged in the microphone and I started my podcast.
Wow. So, with you starting podcasting, because I've been doing it for like 4 years now, do you find it very therapeutic?
I do. And so for me, a lot of people will say that they start their podcast for other people. I'm going to be completely honest. I started my podcast originally for myself. And it was because I was feeling disconnected from work. And more than that, I started to feel like, am I still capable and qualified to do something else? And I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but you're
Yeah.
doing the same thing kind of over and over again. It feels a little rinse and repeat. And I was doubting, like, can I actually do other things? What other skills do I have? And so podcasting was really an opportunity for me, not just to do something different, but also to remind myself that I am capable of trying new things and succeeding at new things. And so podcasting was really that thing for me to be able to first light myself back up. And I loved it almost instantly. I was terrible at it in the beginning. My show sounded terrible. Even my first episode, it was a mess. It was literally the equivalent of having to dive into a pool to learn how to swim. It didn't have any cohesion. It didn't start like a traditional first episode. But you know what? I needed to do it because I had delayed it for so long. And I said, if I just put out the first episode, I know that every week I will get better and better and better. And that's what I did.
Yes, that's my same mode. You know what's so crazy? It's like I still be nervous a little bit, but it's like it feels good to even just have your own platform and you actually just let things go and help other people. And then once you hear the outcome on how you help someone, because you'll be an overthinker, you think you're not reaching out to anybody or anything. So once that confirmation comes, it's like, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the people that I met and I meet when I interview other people, we have conversations like this that might not have normally happened. And just even being present with the person and learning about them and building that connection, those were the types of things that I needed because oftentimes when we're working, we're seeing the same people day in and day out. It's the same people. And it can start to feel a little monotonous. And we just want to stretch and expand and hear other people's stories. And from hearing, at least for me, from hearing other people's stories, it reminds me of what I'm capable of. It reminds me of what else exists. And so that was a beautiful part about podcasting for me, of really immersing myself in somebody else's world and also taking myself out of my own world, even for just a little while.
Yes, that is amazing. So you pivoting in your 30s and then developing your own personal brand, which is something that could be very difficult because you could be a jack of all trades. How did you figure out exactly which area you were going to touch base with first?
So, podcasting was really the lane that I decided to go into. And so, I think we can think of it in a couple of different ways when we're kind of deciding how we want to niche down. And I do believe it is important to niche down. So, for me, I decided okay, podcasting was the thing that I was going to be known for. And I started to go to conferences. I introduced myself to people. I would go in rooms where everybody was smarter than I was. I would raise my hand. I would ask all the dumb questions. I wasn't afraid about what other people were going to think about me. I was a beginner. I let people know that I was a beginner, but that I was eager to learn. So I'd ask the questions, they'd come back, they'd tell me things to do. I would implement all of it. I would come back and let them know, look, these are the things I implemented. I have more questions. And the great thing about it is when you ask for people to help you, but you actually implement the things that they help you do, they want to help you more. And so that's exactly what I did. And then I started to ask, like, hey, I would love to speak. And so the first conference I spoke at in podcasting is called PodFest. It
Okay.
happens every January in Orlando. I don't know if you've ever been, but it's one of my favorite conferences. And then I asked to speak at Podcast Movement. And so then I spoke at Podcast Movement and I kept asking people because I always had this relentlessness about me that the worst that someone can tell me is no.
Yeah.
And if no is the worst thing that I can hear, I've heard way worse than that before in my lifetime. So that no, it don't feel like anything for me.
Wow. That is amazing though, because sometimes people will find themselves getting discouraged of hearing no all the time and not keep asking to a point for them to be able to hear that yes moment. So once you heard that yes moment, how did you feel when you end up transitioning over, end up like actually doing it? You like, wow, I'm really here.
It was pretty amazing to be able to do something. And again, I don't really know how to explain it other than it completely changed my life. Like that is, it's not dramatic. It's truly changed my life by making that one decision because I really believe it all starts with a single decision. And the decision for me was to start podcasting. Then the next decision was to go into these rooms of people that I hadn't known. The next decision was to ask if I could speak on stages. And from there, once you start to make these intentional decisions, people will now see you as the very thing that you want to be. And so people weren't asking about the corporate jobs that I worked at anymore. They now saw me as Monica the podcaster. And that was like the first iteration of who I was back in 2017. It was Monica the podcaster, and she speaks. Then later it transitioned to the speaker. And now it's what I do now, which is personal brand and communication strategy. But all of that sort of happened following this path of just saying yes and making the decision to do something different.
So, what advice do you have for someone that's in the process, because I know a lot of people are leaving the corporate world and they want to venture out to their own and create their own path. What is something that you could give them for advice for them to at least start at square one? Because people are talented these days, and we have social media that gives you so many options as well. How could they actually break that down into different things as far as how they could start at least and get things going?
So I love that you asked this question because I've been thinking about this idea a lot. So the first thing, I never recommend that anybody just immediately leave their job. I'm not the coach or the consultant that's ever going to say, just leave your job. I
Mhm.
think that we have bills that need to be paid. We have benefits that are important for us. We have other people that might be depending on us. So I would say the first thing is to think about what you can do alongside of whatever your job is. So test it out first. The second thing I'll say is that entrepreneurship really isn't for everyone. And
Mhm.
that's hard to believe because when we go on social media, it's glorified that entrepreneurship is all these unicorns and rainbows and it's the soft life. And I don't really subscribe to that. It requires a lot of work and oftentimes more work than we put into our full-time jobs in order to get things up and running. Now, does it get to a place where, yes, it does start to even out, where you have systems in place, where you have consistent money coming in? It does. But in the beginning, it really takes a lot of hustle, a lot of grind, a lot of making mistakes, a lot of hearing no's. And I don't say that to discourage anyone. I say that to actually encourage you because that's how you know you're doing it right. If you're getting no's, if you feel like you're alone thinking, what is it that I'm doing? That is all normal. And so I want you to also know that that's part of the process that not enough people talk about when we're going online and we're seeing, I made this amount of money and I'm doing this and that. You're not hearing about all of the things that are happening behind the scenes. So I just want to be really honest with everyone who's listening. All those things are going to happen and they're all completely normal. So that's the first thing I'll say. Then, when we're thinking about what do we want to do, really ask yourself, do I want to start a business or am I just tired of working?
Yeah.
And this is a real question to ask because I think, and I see this sometimes even with my clients, entrepreneurship isn't another form of a sabbatical. It's not just a vacation. It really is a lot of work to be able to decide, what am I going to do? How am I going to bring money into my business? How am I going to work through things when maybe I'm not feeling well or my kids are sick or whatever those things are happening in your life? The business still has to keep going. So if you're just tired of working, I don't recommend entrepreneurship as the alternative to that because you are still going to be working. It's just going to be in a different way. Now, for those of you who are still with me and are like, okay, I get all that. I still want to pursue it. I say, fantastic. I'm all about it. And I want to be able to support you in this podcast, outside of this podcast, in all the ways. So the first thing I would think is make a list of all of the things. So you'll have two columns. On the left side, I want you to put all your skills, your expertise, and your talents. So this can be everything from as small as you're the person who organizes all the family vacations and you know how to put the itinerary together, you know how to get the best flight deals, all of those things, to your expertise, where maybe you're an accountant, maybe you're listening to this and you work in medicine. Whatever it is you do, I want you to list that all on the left side of the form. On the right side, I want you to think, how can each of the things that you listed on the left side connect to somebody's pain point that they have right now? So, for example, I work with a client who does HR but in law firms. And so, what she does now, she wanted to make additional money. And so, she offers consulting services where she packages up how to make your first hire, how to make the onboarding process smoother. And then she sells that to smaller law firms who don't have the capacity to have big HR teams. And so she bundles this as a service. But you see what she did? She took her expertise, which was in HR, specifically working at law firms, and she figured out what was the need that other smaller law firms might have. And that's how she started to build her business. So I want you to just really think about it that way. What is the skills, expertise, and talents you have? And then how can you connect that to somebody's pain points? Once you've done that, Then think, what is the thing that I would want to do for the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and then pursue that.
Yes. That was amazing.
Mhm.
It really was amazing. You like hit everything. When it comes to social media, a lot of times people look at following, how many followers you have, how many people you're following. They look at your views, they look at how many people like your post and everything. Can you explain to people that a lot of times those things do not matter? Because sometimes you can have like maybe 5,000 followers, but you could still land a brand deal in so many ways. You can still get sponsorship on your podcast. You can still get a lot of things where it is people that believe in you and see the potential in you. And it shouldn't stop you from keep going just because you don't have those followings and views and going viral and things like that.
Absolutely. And I love that you asked this question because when I work with my clients and I think about building the personal brand, what I'm qualified to do is focus on your personal brand. And I'm not working with people to have them become influencers. Maybe that happens as a byproduct, but we're not focused on viral views. We're not focused on amassing a large amount of followers. We're focused on your goals. So, how do we get to your goals, which might be to make more money, which is to become a speaker, to be a better communicator? So, what are the business and professional goals that you have for yourself? And I like to say at its core, I help established or emerging leaders get to the C suite. Now, the C suite might be the corporate C suite, or it might be the own definition of C suite, SWEET, that you have for yourself. So
Mm.
maybe that's traveling every month. Maybe that's setting aside a certain amount of money or building for retirement. But the vehicle that we use to get you there is in service of your goal. So I don't think about social media accounts because I've spoken on amazing stages. I've spoken at over 100 companies in the past 3 years. I have less than 10,000 followers on Instagram. And on LinkedIn, I might have around 2,000. This is not a large following by any means. But the way that I'm able to get those opportunities is one, the relationships that I'm building. Two, the ways that I'm able to go out and ask for opportunities, because that's a big thing. It's not just sitting back and waiting, but how much are you willing to go out and ask for these opportunities? And three, I'm very specific about what I do and who I help. When you do those things really well and you continue to do them over and over, not just once, but when you continue to do them over and over, that's how things start moving and your personal brand is shaped.
That is so true. So when you're actually building your brand, wouldn't it still like be difficult for someone to actually gain the community that they need that will actually utilize their services? Because if you're transitioning from not working to trying to build a brand, how are you going to end up getting people to actually trust you, first of all, and feel as though that you can help them with whatever services that you are trying to sell to them and for them to believe in you? So how are you actually getting people to, just build that trust there for them to actually purchase anything that you're selling?
Absolutely. So, the first thing I would advise is you have to show up as the person that you are. So, show up in full authority of your expertise. You know what you're an expertise in. So, show up in the space in that way. And so, what I mean by that is when we think about personal brand, and it's an interesting thing because a lot of people now are speaking about the topic of personal brand, thought leadership. It's thrown around a lot. Now, I've been doing this for the past 7 years. No one ever asked about the companies that I used to work for. And so I just want to put that in people's minds that the first part of personal brand is personal. So I have 3 C's of personal branding. And if it's okay, I'd love to share it just so people can kind of take these nuggets and do something with this episode. Would that be okay?
You're more than welcome.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So the 3 C's. So the first C is to create your own wave. So when we talk about personal brand being personal, it's not about looking like everyone else, which is why your expertise, your skills, and your talents are so important. because there's something that you have, but then the way that you talk about them, the way that you're able to help people, that's what's going to look different. And even the story that you have attached to it. When I talk about my story and I share just a little bit about being in corporate and then moving to podcasting and starting personal branding, I can even go well beyond that to the way that I got into corporate was because I chose my career based off of survival. So I'm born and raised in the Bronx. My family passed away when I was a teenager, and I had to live life on my own. So my goal when I was looking at roles in college was who's going to pay me. And that was the way I looked at it. It wasn't about following my bliss. It wasn't what was going to make me the happiest. It was, I don't have anyone else to depend on. Everything is on my shoulders. My survival rests only in me. So I need to make sure I find something that is going to pay me well. And that's the real of it. And that's how I chose my career. So even when I share that with you right now, that makes my brand personal. And you listening to this have your own story that makes it personal for you. So when you're starting to create your own wave, I want you to start infusing your story into it. Why is this the thing that you're passionate about? Why is this the skill that you know that you're extremely qualified to help people with? And talk about that. That starts to build your authority in the space so that when people are deciding, do I choose A or B, they choose you.
Yeah.
The second part is the second C is to craft your focus. It's that question of what do you want to be known for? A great way to see if this is true is to think about how you want to be known. How would you want people to introduce you? If you weren't in the room and someone was saying, hey, I want to recommend you to this person, to my friend, what words would you want them to use to describe you? Ask your friends or people that are close to you, how would you describe what I do? If they're not clear, then that shows you that there's an opportunity to help educate people for what you want to be known. What's the title you want to be called? What's your specialty? Whatever that is. Now you can start to educate people. And the best way and easiest way to do that is to start calling yourself that very thing. So I could have called myself many things, but I'm a personal brand and communication strategist. I chose that name. No one gave me that name, but it's based on what I do. You can do the very same thing. And then the last C is to craft your persona. So when I say persona, think about when Beyonce had come out with Sasha Fierce, right? Sasha Fierce was still Beyonce, but it was Beyonce amplified. It was this version of her when she said, you know what? I'm ready to go to the next stratosphere. And for me to do that, I need to start to think about what is the persona that I'm going to put out. And so she created Sasha Fierce. And even now, Beyonce's brand speaks for her. She very rarely gives interviews. She has documentaries that come out, but that she produces herself. So all of that is very controlled. And that's the last C, to craft the persona so that people have an idea of you when they think about you. And that is the fastest way to start building your brand.
So even when in the midst of building a brand, you have to network as well. So networking comes a lot for me personally. I'm a huge introvert. I will go to an event sometimes and it's hard for me to approach people and say, hey, how you doing? Just all of that. Sometimes I will just sit at the table through the whole event and everything. What advice do you have for some of those introverts that are trying to network and still build their personal brand at the same time and mostly stay connected with people? Because staying connected comes with introvert too, because you're really not used to continuing to build a relationship with people and continuing a conversation with them on maybe the weekly or other week daily basis, and it's like it feels weird sometimes.
I completely understand. I have spoken, as I said, over 100 companies in the past 3 years. We're talking about TEDx, New York Times, Time Magazine, all of these places. And I am an introvert. People
Really?
think, well, if I'm a speaker, I must be an extrovert. No, I am an introvert. After my talks, I go home. I need to recharge. I get really quiet. There's times where even if I'm driving home from a speaking engagement, I won't have anything on, no music, no podcast.
That's
I'm just really quiet to recharge myself. So I completely understand what it's like to be an introvert, to go into spaces even now and go to maybe conferences, or it could even be smaller networking events, and still have this feeling of almost having to wind yourself up to
Yes.
get into conversations with people. So I completely understand this, even in the role that I have right now. So, what I will say is go into your event always with the goal. The goal might be I want to connect with 3 people tonight. And this is what I'm hoping that can happen. Maybe we exchange social media information. Maybe I just simply introduce myself to 3 people so I can feel like I'm getting the reps under my belt. But always give yourself a goal when you go into the event. Then, an easy way is to look for someone who is also maybe quiet, maybe hanging out on their own, maybe they're looking at their phone. Those are usually signs that there are other introverts as well, and go up to that person. Because an introvert just wants to have like an easy form of conversation. So that's an easier way to kind of identify like you're my people because you're also here. I've had great conversations doing that simply by looking at somebody else who might be in the corner of the room or sitting by themselves. And that's a great way to start a conversation. Then, in terms of maintaining the connection, you can check in once a month. You can send a text, you could send a note on social media. Hey, girl, I was just thinking about you. Actually, I'll say this. I'd met someone I'd spoken in April at Arlen Hamilton's event, Your First Million Live. And in the audience, it was an amazing group of people. Like everyone was so supportive, such a good community. I'd met these 2 women that run a travel company. I ran into an article yesterday that was emailed, one of these newsletters that I received, and it was something related to traveling might be good for mental health and it slows down aging. And I remembered them and I sent them a note just through the DMs and said, hey, I read this article and I thought about you. It was as simple as that. They said, thanks so much for really thinking about us. We always appreciate your support. And then we went our separate ways. It was a very small interaction, but I guarantee you by doing that, they remembered, and they'll remember me in the future, maybe when somebody else is thinking about it, or maybe they see an article that might be interesting to me. And it can be connections just as small as that without having to maybe get on a Zoom and spend 30 minutes trying to figure out what you're going to talk about. You can maintain connections simply by remembering some small details about a person.
True. I gotta get better at that, Monica. Because I'm telling you, I've had met so many amazing people. I do in the future. I do want to speak on more panels. The impact that I get after speaking, it just be like, wow, I didn't know that I can really impact people like this. I didn't know that people really be wanting to hear me like that. And I'm even noticing that now just with me podcasting. I didn't know like people want to hear more of me and they love hearing me. So it's just it's something very, very difficult for me. And I'm sure a lot of my listeners, they have reached out many, many times. That's why I said they were going to love this podcast because a lot of them are struggling with the same thing as well. A lot of people are.
And I just want to say though that for your podcast, like you are showing up in this way, and this is public speaking. Public speaking isn't just getting in front of an auditorium or in an arena on a stage. This is public speaking right now, what you're doing. And even though you bring guests, and I'm very grateful to be here, but people show up to listen to you. And I really just want you to like receive that and really receive that you are creating a space and you are the glue, you're the connective tissue that people are showing up for. And so because you're co-signing on myself and your other guests, people want to listen in, but it's truly because of you. So, whether it's you or anybody else listening to this episode right now and you have the desire to speak, you can also create your own stage. And a podcast is a wonderful way to create your own stage. And there's many other ways to do that. Social media is an opportunity to create your own stage. But don't discount all of the great work that you do because you're already public speaking.
Yeah, you're right. I just have to actually, take it in and actually just go with it. It's difficult sometimes. So can you let us know what type of services do you provide and how you can help many people that are listening?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I work one on one with people, and usually they're some sort of corporate professionals, some are solopreneurs that have started their own business. And we work on what I call the leadership trifecta. So I believe we are all leaders, whether we feel it inside or we have people that report to us or we are the heads of our businesses, we are all leaders. And so my leadership trifecta focuses on three main things. The first is personal brand. So if you already have one, we're going to refine it and make sure that it's precise and laser focused so people know exactly what you do. If you don't have one yet, fantastic. We're going to start from the ground up and we're going to build what that personal brand looks like. The second piece is thought leadership. And you asked about this before. How can people trust you? And so thought leadership is where you have an opportunity to share your own perspective. Now, for many of us that have worked in a role for a long time, not everybody always wants to know our perspective, but this is an opportunity to actually give your opinion on topics that mean something to you. And this is what starts to differentiate you from everyone else. And then the third piece of the triangle, the third piece of the trifecta is executive presence, which is the communication. How do you build a signature talk? How do you deliver that talk? Because there's one part of it, which is the business of public speaking, but then there's the art of public speaking. How are you able to move people with your words and get invited back? And so with my clients, I either work on one or all three of those things. And we do that in coaching, one on one coachings, because it's very specific. And it's harder to teach that in a group. And so I like to work one on one with people. And then the other side of my business is companies will hire me to talk to people in their company, to talk to employees, and it will be on topics just like this. How do we have better leaders within our companies? And so that's the two different ways that you can work with me.
Wow. Can you share one of the most impactful testimonies of you helping one of your clients and it was just a reality of you just like, wow, this is amazing. I am the one that really helped this person and it made you feel so good.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's interesting is that I work with both women and men.
Okay.
And I was working with this one client, and he came to me, and for the first few weeks, he said he wanted to talk about personal brand. And we were about the third week in, and everything we kept talking about wasn't exactly personal brand. And he tells me, I hired you because I have this goal, this professional goal. I want to be a chief investment officer, but I don't really believe that I can do it. I think I'm too old to be able to accomplish this goal. And I thought, okay, first he needed to develop that trust in me to really tell me what was beyond the goal. So it wasn't just personal brand. It was like, this is this bigger vision that I have for myself, this dream. And I tell you, every single week, he was so coachable. And what I mean by coachable is sharing openly and then receiving the feedback, being able to really dive into the thoughts that he had, and then implement the strategy. And every week he would go back, he would implement the strategy, we would touch base, have our next session. By the end of 4 months together, he had decided to buy his own set of businesses and he made himself the chief investment officer of his own company. So he went from at first wanting someone to choose him to be a chief investment officer to being able to look back and say, I can give myself this own title. I can start this business on my own. And he went and he gave himself the title and he started pitching to other companies to bring in venture capital money. And he was able to do it. And we were able to do that in 4 months. But
Wow.
that is only a testament to one, he was open to being coaching, and two, he was so determined to get to his goal that every week he kept putting that into practice until he was able to get it.
Wow. That's amazing, Monica.
It
Oh,
was,
wow.
I mean, extraordinary, extraordinary when I think about that. And so that is the person, not everyone is going to have that same journey, but I do want people to know that change doesn't have to take a long time. If you are committed to the change and you are committed to the decision that you're making, because to take it full circle, it all starts with that decision, miraculous things can happen.
It definitely can. Can you give us an example of an elevator pitch?
Okay, so for me, I will say I help BIPOC professionals who are emerging or established leaders create a personal brand that commands attention. So that is an example of an elevator pitch. I've just told you who I help, how I help them, and what I do. So you want to make sure you kind of hit all of those points. That's more of an elevator pitch. If I were speaking, let's say I was going to a networking event, I might say, and someone asked me, oh, what do you do? I would say, you know how there's so much noise on the internet that it kind of feels like it's hard to stand out? Well, I help people stand out online by building a personal brand that grabs attention. So you see how I kind of made it a little bit more conversational there, but I asked a question. So what I did by asking the question is I started to get buy-in so that the person's like, yeah, I know what this means. And now they're curious to hear what I say at the other side of it. So that's a little example of how to do it.
Wow, that's amazing. So where do you see yourself 2 years from now?
Let's see, 2 years from now. One, I would like to be working with more clients, of course. I would also like to be working within companies themselves, and I have a dual purpose for that. I think that there's not enough emphasis on how to develop leaders in organizations, and I think that's how people end up with a lot of bad managers that they don't really love. So there's one part of it. But also, I have been the first and only in almost every room that I worked in corporate America. So the first woman, the first Latina, the first BIPOC person, or the only person in these rooms. And I want to help develop specifically BIPOC leaders to have those things so that they are promoted. So when we hear things about underrepresented communities not getting the same amount of opportunities, I can't change the system, but I can help create leaders so it makes it so much harder for those people to tell them no. For every excuse that a management organization might have to not promote people from our community, to overlook people, I want to help knock down all of those things by helping to develop leaders.
And you want to do it too.
Thank you. I hope so.
You will. You will.
That's my mission. That's my mission. That's what I do. That's what I try to do every day.
Oh, you will, that for sure. So how can people get in contact with you?
So if you're on Instagram, you can go to You Wanna Do What. And my website is the same thing, youwannadowhat.com. So if you want to learn more about me, if you want to reach out via email or social media, we can do that. And if you're interested in working together, there's also a way to go online there. We have a free discovery call where you and I will just meet for an hour to learn a little bit about your needs, your goals. And it's really just your time to share in a safe space with someone what these big ideas you have are for yourself, for your career, for your business. And then you and I will see whether or not it's a match. So if you go to youwannadowhat.com, that's the easiest way to find all of the information about me.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you for being on my podcast show. It means a lot to me because just the information that you give, a lot of people, they pay for it. And you actually took the time out to actually just come here and just share a few of the gems that you have where it can at least lead people to the steps of actually stepping out and actually taking the first step to their career path. So I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I hope if anybody's listened to this, please just send me a message. Let me know that this episode resonated with you and that it served you in some way, because I'll be looking for you as the next leader. And so as much as we need to keep one hand up so that we can move someone, I also believe in having one hand down to pull other people up with us. And so hopefully we've been able to achieve that, you and I, today on this episode. And I hope it served your audience.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to Life Her Podcast, the podcast that guides you from the 9-to-5 grind to the freedom of your own path. Discover how to conquer life's challenges while pursuing your passions with unwavering faith. Because being an entrepreneur is not easy. So let's get to it.